Hi, everybody. My name's Matt Domko. I am the head of security at Zenity. I'm passionate about a couple of things. Security engineering is certainly up in the top, but leadership theory, I got introduced to this concept called organizational psychology, and it's just nerd out about it later with me. It's fun. But yeah, so that's me. That's who I am. Before we get started, quick show of hands. Who here is from like a manga company? That's right. I'm using the acronym now.
You used the wrong.
Is it a different?
No, it isn't. I'm not like.
Okay. All right. So about half the group. So here's the disclaimer that I'll give you as we go through this. The reason I wrote this talk is because I've been spending a lot of time with founders of startups, smaller companies, and they're trying to figure out, based on what phase we're in, how do we grow security throughout that program? And so if you're at Amazon right now and you're on one of like 12 federated security teams and you're trying to figure out how to write your 5-pager so that you can get approved for OP2, all those terms, I've kind of backed away from them. And so the focus of this is really from that like first security hire up until we get close to an Amazon scale. And so that's sort of the goal of what we're going to talk about today. I kind of answered the why, where it comes from. But in reality, the reason why I wanted to create this talk is because security kills companies. And when I say that, you probably think this, right? If there's a significant breach, if we release software with a CVSS 500 score, we're going to have a bad time. The company's going to struggle. So it's going to be tough. But the other thing that kills companies is security. And so if we're forming an organization and there's only 5 of us, but every single thing that you want to do requires a ticket, that's going to slow the company down. It's going to die before it can actually make any progress. If every single third-party library that you and your co-founder want to use has to get reviewed by a security person, you're going to light money on fire asking someone to review all of these libraries, and your company's not going to go anywhere. So whenever I think security kills companies, I think in both of those lenses. And so how do we, as we're building these programs, make the right decision? So the first question is, when I meet with these founders is, well, what should the security team look like? What should the program look like? And the answer, just with everything else, is it depends. Who said it depends this week? Right? It's our favorite phrase as security practitioners. The same thing goes when we're building the team. But the it depends in this case is, what does the business actually do? Are we in an industry that requires super, super high-level security programs? Or are we in an industry where, if my Facebook pictures get shared all over the internet because I linked with this new device, it's not really the end of the world to me. Is the company 5 people or 500 people? And then the culture of the company kind of plays into it as well, and we'll talk about that too. So whenever I try to solve for those last few questions, I start off by defining our business persona. I identify the needed security personas, and then I figure out how to organize them. So we said, well, it depends on the industry, it depends on this, it depends on that. These 4 questions are going to be the things that really help you right-size the program that you're building. The first one, what type of product do we have? Are we selling directly to consumers? Because they don't generally care as long as the product works. Are we selling to Amazon? Well, they care. The Amazon third-party security team will run you through the mill. It's tough. Or are we selling to businesses and they're going to take our product and put it directly in front of their customer? So if you think about the difference between how worried you are about Jira versus how worried you are about Auth0. If you are Auth0, you're very, very worried about your site going down because it's not just you, it's half the internet that decided to sign up with Auth0. And so understanding where the business fits in that place is really important. The next piece, are we in some sort of special industry? So creating an AI IoT device, that could go either way. It could be a HIPAA compliant medical device that uses AI, or it could be a stupid orange box that you can talk to it and it can pretend like it's controlling something for you. And then the last piece is about the customers. So when we think about our customers, are they very, very focused on the tech, or do they just want something that's going to work? They're not actually interested in it. We're just a pathway to getting things done. Based on all those things, the way that we build the program is going to change. So we've kind of covered how the business needs us to act, but now we need to think about what does my team need to be made of? So I like to call these security personas, and I break them down into work type and superpowers. So work type, super broad. Is it corporate security? So we're thinking about laptops, printers, software, endpoint, device, and response. That's not the right acronym for EDR. EDR software, we're thinking about those kind of things. Product security. This is where we're actually thinking about the software that our company wrote. We're thinking about all the features that are involved and do they actually support a secure adoption by our customers. And then the last part is the part that keeps founders, I think, the most busy, which is sales security. Because if I start a company in my garage and I try to sell it to someone else and say, you should be my first customer, they're going out on a limb to trust me inside their environment. And so a big part of what a founding security person is going to do is, what does the customer want? Okay, I need to go do that right now. So that's sales security. And then we have superpowers. And so I like to separate the focus area from the superpower because you're engaging in a totally different way. So if you're engaging with an auditor, you're very, very focused. I have all of my artifacts done. I have all of my policy letters written. If you're dealing with engineering, you're creating libraries, you're reviewing designs, you're helping engineers understand that the pattern that they chose to start with doesn't work just from an availability perspective, but also from a confidentiality and integrity perspective. And then the last piece, which is really, really fun when you get to work for a security company, is the evangelism. Because you get to go places and say, hey, I know something about security, let me teach you about it. Or here's a struggle that we're having internally. Let me share that struggle and how we solved it. You're going to need, at a small to medium-sized company, someone that can stretch across these, all 9 of those areas. So what I do is, when I first meet with the founders, is I sit down and I draw out this little 9 box, but instead of having somebody's potential versus their current performance, I lay out those personas and those focus areas. And it's really nice because if I look at the tasks that I have to complete throughout a week, a month, a year, I can typically put a dot somewhere on that grid that says this is the work that I'm doing. So when I meet with founders and we're talking about, hey, there's like 10 of us right now, and we want to make our first security hire, I typically tell them no. I typically tell them what you need is an SRE with a black hoodie. What you need is to be thinking about the future, but not necessarily building that huge program that you had at Facebook, because it's not going to serve the business in the same way because you don't have the same resources and you don't have the same constraints. And so this is what the security team at a very small startup looks like. The big thing about working in this area is anywhere we go wrong, the company's going to die. If I make security too hard, I'm going to kill the company. If I'm not secure enough to make the customer happy, I'm going to kill the company. And then if I end up on CNN, I'm certainly not going to be having a good time. So what do we do to address that? The way that I like to talk them through this is find a trusted partner. At this stage in your life, you really need someone who has expertise in the problems that you have. And so if you have a problem with a customer needing you to have a SOC 2, yes, you can absolutely invest hundreds of hours in doing all of those steps yourself. Or you can hire someone that's really good at building out a good SOC 2 compliant program. And they'll come in, they'll help you, and then they'll actually help you find the auditors that will audit you, and then the entire process just sort of rolls through. The same thing goes for EDR. I wouldn't want to manage an organization that doesn't have some sort of antivirus running on it, right? That doesn't sound like a good thing for me. But at 0 to 50 people, I don't have the resources to hire a full-time detection and response person and a full-time corporate security person to make sure that it's managed, to make sure that it's monitored, to make sure that we're doing something when it's over. And so what I'll typically do is find a third party to partner with, and hey, you're gonna be my managed SOC, and this is what you're gonna solve for us. Typically, it's the other way around. You go to them and you say, I need an adult, and then like 5 different vendors will pop out of the woodwork and say, hey, we do security for you, you just gotta pay us. And it's typically much less expensive than a principal engineer full-time working on those things. The other thing that I like to focus on in this phase is composable security patterns. What do I mean by that? I hate solving this one-off problem. I hate looking at a single API and making sure that it's secure. What I really like doing is saying, hey, as long as you imported our library for doing authorization and authentication, we're done. Just only use that library. And then either me or one of those third parties that I hired will help me create a CI/CD pipeline that validates, okay, yes, they used that library they were supposed to. There are people you can hire to help you create checks in your CI/CD pipeline that say, okay, you didn't pull in any dependencies that we know are compromised. Next week, we'll get a different answer, thanks AI, but it makes it better. And then the last piece is self-service tools. So one of my favorite things about working at the bigger companies is you get to build these super impactful, super scalable self-service processes. I have a friend who helped roll out Santa internally. And it was the coolest thing because instead of having to manually approve every single binary, we just had a web page. And you run a command, paste in the hash of the binary that you want to be able to run. And then if enough people click, yes, this is legitimate, I want to run it, it's just automatically allow listed. That's a really cool self-service tool to help the company be safe, but also unblock people. But at 0 to 50, you don't get to build that. You need to find someone else to do that for you so that you can do other things. The sort of the high-level thought for 0 to 50 is, I don't have a program, I have a problem. And we're going to solve those problems. Eventually, we will push those problems into programs. So here's sort of what that looks like. We went from just that one person to now we're augmenting with some sort of external staffing. Super secret that I hope is not as big of a secret as it feels like it is sometimes. If you're launching a startup and you're like, I want this, but I can't really afford to spend $500,000 on a top tier integrator. Fun fact, AWS, Google, Microsoft all have accelerators for startups where you can say, hey, I'm starting a company, it's pretty cool, but I need help. and they'll end up giving you credits. You can use those credits not just for compute and storage, you can use those credits for professional services. And so I've worked at companies where we got 6 months of expert support from an entire team of people, and it cost the business $0 because we went through those accelerator programs. So certainly take advantage of those. In any case, 0 to 50, you're getting support, you're not providing support. So the next phase is what I like to say we're scaling. So it's 50 to 250 people. The things that you're thinking is, oh my goodness, I can't believe we did that 3 months ago, and now it's a problem. How do we solve it? The things that you're thinking are, why did our last customers not care about this, but these new ones that are writing us extra zeros on the contracts, why do these new customers care so much about the version of TLS that we're using? You're struggling with maturing with your customer base. But one thing that you're noticing is those personas that we thought about earlier, compliance, engineering, evangelism, sales, product, corporate security, they're starting to become less of these just one person grabbing whatever they can, and they're slowly turning into pillars. So you might slowly have one person who handles all things compliance. And that person works both with customers and with auditors and with the engineering team. The idea is, as we continue to grow, we're able to specialize a little bit more, and life gets easier. So if you look, I don't think it's on the next slide, but you'll see that I added 3 things here. Instead of that one giant bubble in the middle, we still have our support, but we also have our GRC analyst who handles things top to bottom within the compliance field. We have our security operations person, which handles sort of product security, corporate security, left to right. And then we have a ProdSec tech lead. This is typically, when I think like a first hire at a company, it's typically that ProdSec tech lead, and then they're just struggling until they can get into that grouping where they actually have 2 other people wearing those 2 other hats. As we're looking at hiring, so you've got your first security person, they join, they're just sort of running around because everything's on fire. They're obviously gonna say, I need help. The thing that I think I've seen a lot of companies go wrong with is they're like, oh, well, we have a budget, we already have a senior person, why do I need another senior person? Oh, well, the team's growing, maybe we should hire a manager to organize all of this. And what is no fun, in my experience, is to be a manager of a team with one person that actually executes. Because what are you doing as a manager if you have one engineer that does all of the work? So those first 3 hires in security, as we start to scale, I think, in my opinion, I love to see them all be executors. They're people that are subject matter experts in their field. They're people that are really excited about what they do. And they're people that aren't afraid to stretch out a little bit, because we're still not in a place where you can just say, oh, this is my lane. The other thing you notice as the company grows, that same focus we had within security, we're gonna have outside of security. So when the company first started, it was probably 5 engineers, 1 marketing person who did literally everything for marketing. So as far as I have to worry about random software being installed that's actually malware, there's like 1 person at the company I have to worry about. We can be friends, it's pretty easy. When we get to 50 to 250 people, you've got like 10 people that are non-technical. You've got like 30 people that are non-technical. You've got way more people that haven't been here since the beginning, and they don't innately understand all of the problems that you've been facing. And you have to either have time to teach them all or have time to respond to all of those problems. I think there's a happy medium between those 2, but the point is, at this phase, the business is chaotic, and you're just gonna have to figure out how to deal with it. When we get over 300 people, this is where, because earlier I said we're starting to switch from personas to pillars. When we get over 300 people, this is where we see those pillars show up. And the gap between this and a 5,000 person organization is really going to come down to how well did you define each one of those services that fill out within it. So at 300 people plus, this is where we need to start planning, because if we're at 300 people today, we're going to be at 600 people in 6 months. We're going to be at 1,000 people in 9 months. If you think back to those first questions that we were asking about the business, one of those questions is, how big is the company going to be in 6 months? We need that answer so that we can decide on how much capacity we need. So at this phase, we have to be taking time, and this is really hard to do because you have this opportunity to just always feel like you're doing the right thing, which is putting out a fire. But if it's a tiny fire right now, and we just leave that other thing that's not even fun to do, planning, if I just leave that to the side while I put out tiny fires, in 6 months, that fire is going to be huge, and I'm not going to be able to put it out. And I'm just going to have to continue to do my best. So making time for yourself towards the edge of that 50 to 250 growth phase in order to actually do some solid planning, thinking about what the business needs you to do, that's super, super important. As we grow this team, we're thinking about what the hotspots are. And what I mean by that is, if I spend 90% of my time doing customer security reviews, a customer wants to buy something, I need to tell them how secure we are. I spend 90% of my time doing it. What else aren't I doing? And is that the most valuable thing that I can do? Or can we find someone that specializes in that to just do that, and I can focus on everything else? So the way that you grow this team as you've shifted into the pillars is you look at each one and you say, okay, I spend a lot of time managing vulnerabilities in Python libraries because nobody is going through and updating the way that I want them to, and it makes my reports look bad. And I'm sorry, as flashback from work. The point is, you find this hotspot and you decide either I'm going to invest in technology to solve it for me, or I'm going to invest in a person to build out that problem space. So there's been lots of high-level, hypothetical, how do I do this? Or this is what you need to do. Taking it and putting it more into practice, how do we plan ahead? Once we're at the point where we're defining pillars, I really like these 3, by the way. I think they will get you through up to like a 500-person company. And it makes sense in my head, but every company is going to be different. Again, if you work in a medical device field, you probably don't need as much product security as you need GRC. You probably don't need as much security operations at a brick and mortar store as you do loss prevention people, right? So it's going to depend on the way that the work comes into you. But the most important thing that you can do once you've defined these pillars is take the time to write down, these are the buckets that I want to put the tasks that people bring to me. And it's a really weird shift, because if you've ever worked with partners that do service delivery, so if you've ever hired a contracting firm or a staffing firm and you've said, hey, I have this problem, can you just solve it for me? They have a list of services that they provide. If you want a pen test done, you go to a pen testing company and they can look on a sheet and say, all right, I have 5 people, I can do 12 engagements a year based on this math. And they know that because for the first 6 months that they did pen testing, they created a ticket for every single task that they had to do about that pen test. And then they measured how long does it take. They measured how long did the customer have to wait. And then they were able to take that data and actually understand, okay, this is how many resources we need to provide this capability. That same thing that you'll see, the people that you're paying to manage your EDR, the same work that they do, you take that internally. You say, hey, how did you decide how many people you needed in order to support our size of company? And the true professionals in that area will be able to explain to you, oh, well, based on whatever it is, this is how we arrived at the amount of resources we needed. It's a really fun, nerdy math thing. I think we hit everything there. My presenter went away. So we talked about these things. We talked about measuring them. The next piece, once you've measured them, is reporting them in some way. So fun fact, this is a lightly sanitized document that I wrote a few months ago. And this is how I decided I was going to grow my team. It's how I decided, was I going to hire a product security person before a security operations person or before a GRC person? And the way that I did it was pretty easy. We have Jira. So every time someone asked me to do something, I looked at my list of services that I provided and I added a label. Just the simple act of saying customer request as a label in Jira. At the end of a month, I can look back and say, oh, wow, we had 250 questions about our SOC 2 last month. That's a lot. Maybe I need someone to look into that more than I need to have someone look into, I don't know, we'll go with, I have this down here. We'll go with secure design. I only did like 10 design reviews that month. I probably want someone to do the GRC work, and then I can spend more time on getting people to understand, hey, you should come to me for design reviews. But that's why we create these metrics. That's why we put those tags together. We build a table like this, and then we add some color to it. We don't really have, at this phase, a good way to say, oh, one of these tickets is equal to 1 hour of work. There's no way that I'm going to take the time to make sure that I have 50 tickets open for 50 hours worth of work. I'm just not going to do it. And so what I do is, in the document, I write down whatever my assumptions are. I say, we had 26 tickets. Based on a sample, I'm going to assume that each ticket that I worked took about 2 hours to complete. I don't have data on that, but at least I know I have 26 tickets, and I can approximate that if I hire a new person, they're going to have X amount of hours worth of work to do. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. That's gone. So anyway, that's what I take to the CTO and say, I need more people. Because of when we're living, 2 years ago, I was working through the same playbook, and I spent hours and hours and hours managing Jira, and I was reviewing tickets and yelling at people for not putting the right tag on the ticket and all of those things. But because it's 2026, if you have something like Claude Code, you can just define what you want your structure to be, and then create a skill that creates the ticket, applies the tags, and yells at you whenever a ticket exists that doesn't have the tags. And so it's just one of those things that used to be so laborious, and we didn't do it because it was laborious. It's easy now. You have no excuse not to know how much work you did for each service you provide. You might not know the hours, but there's no excuse why you shouldn't know how many different tasks you did. Does that, anybody think like, oh wow, yeah, I used to not want to do that, but it's easy. Okay, so lots of high-level thoughts. I wanted to make time to make this a little bit more interactive. So imagine you just got hired to be the first security person at Novabyte. Or imagine you're the CTO of Novabyte. Give that a read. I'll give you a second, and then we'll go from there. All right, so you're at Novabyte. Now you know your job. Who has a question that they want to know about the business based on what we've learned today? Ooh, okay, so the first question was, is it B2B B to C or B to B to B to B to C. That's a lot of letters. Yeah. So let's go with it's B to B. Anybody else have a question? Go ahead, sir. Oh, what kind of inventory? Okay, say a little bit more. How proprietary is the inventory? So you're talking about of the customer. And so the idea here is getting around, like, are the customers very sensitive to the fact that we know and we have a copy of how much they have? One more over here.
On that, is it pharmaceuticals or farm equipment?
Oh, is it pharmaceuticals or farm equipment? In the Midwest, 95% of chance it's going to be farm equipment. But no, exactly. And so the idea here is to get you thinking about that. Okay, so let's say it's pharmaceuticals. They are very, very worried. What's your next step? Say that again? Current state assessment. I love it. Okay, and then doing the current state assessment, are you going to do it yourself, or what other option do we have? Let me outsource it, right? Can I have $20,000 to get an expert to come in and do the assessment for me? Not only does that take my bias out of the picture, because I work here now, and so now I'll get like a ruthless feedback on the way that we are, but also now I don't have to focus on this thing that anyone with experience can do. I can just read the report and start executing. I probably want to validate some things, right? It's a third party, but I can do that. All right, we'll move on to the next one. ClearPath Retail. Okay, hopefully we can find some new CEOs, some new CTOs, some new heads of security in the room. I'll let you read it. All right, who has a question for the business?
So they are now making their first security hire, and if so, can I short their stuff?
So you're very close to a question that I was hoping someone would ask. So the answer was, I'm the first security hire? Who was doing that? That's not the part you said, though. Did you say that part? Who was doing this before? Can I? I'm skeptical that this is the time to hire a security person. So fun fact, I've showed up to a business before and said, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm your first hire. And I start doing all of these things in a silo. I start doing the assessment myself. I start interviewing people, not within like the core technology, but outside in the rest of the business to understand what's going on. And I build out this plan for how I'm going to build this great program and how valuable I'm going to be. And why hasn't this company been doing this for the last 5 years? And then I meet with my CTO, very proud of myself for all of this work that I did. And he's like, you didn't talk to Jeff? I was like, who's Jeff? He's like, oh, that's our third-party auditor. He's been partnering with us since the very beginning. He's brought in a couple of companies to do these audits. Things have been going pretty well. We've got all of these. He should have told you about these tools. You didn't talk to Jeff? And so one of the first questions that we often forget to ask is, who's solving this problem for you today? If the answer is nobody, okay, great. But it's entirely possible that somebody else has already done that work. Somebody else already understands what the pain points are, and all you have to do is ask. So that was what I was looking for. That was the point of this sort of idea. So yeah. And then like, the other thing to think about that I wanted to cover here too was, we see 12,000 people. If we think 12,000 engineers, product managers, marketing people, that's a lot. But if we think, oh, go ahead.
How many of those are like on-the-floor salespeople in the retail location?
Exactly. How many of those people are in a retail location? How many of those people are delivery drivers? How many of those people don't touch technology in their daily basis at all? And so one of the things that we have to right size with ourselves is, what does that 12,000 person number mean exactly? So we got one more. It's the last example. So I'm hoping I can get 4 new CTOs, 4 new first security hires this time. So I'll let you get a read of it. All right. Who's got a question that hasn't asked one yet? All right, in the back.
Given that they live almost entirely in the physical world for their business, their product, their customers, and all of that, why are they hiring rather than outsourcing?
Exactly. So the question for the business was, you are like 90%, you're mostly in the physical world. Why are you hiring me? Why are you not outsourcing? And that question is really hard to ask during an interview. But you know what's worse than going to this interview and asking a weird question? Is showing up, doing your best, doing what you think the business needs, and then finding out we don't have the budget for a $2 million security program because we're in the physical world. If all of our computers stop working tomorrow, we'll keep making knives until we buy new computers. And so the thing that we always have to make sure we're thinking about is, am I protecting enough revenue to actually justify this beautiful program that I want to build? There are no bonus points for extra security. Yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. Questions? Let me pop to the next slide. There we go. In front.
How do you make a business case for an emerging risk or a problem?
This is a great question. The question was, how do you make a business case for an emerging risk or a problem? And so I worked with a really good CISO 5 or 6 years ago. And the thing that he would always say is, data wins arguments. If we don't have data, use professional judgment. Somewhere in between there, right, is this idea that we can approximate something else. So we'll say 2 years ago, AI was brand new. A year ago, nobody could easily have an AI run their computer. How do you make a business case for protecting the company from that? And you can look back throughout history. When's the last time we had something new? Machine learning, right? Anybody remember whenever every sales pitch that you got was, we have the world's greatest machine learning algorithm to detect and destroy threats on your network? Did you guys see that commercial? Yeah, last week. Okay. So whenever that started happening, and you can see this in the standards that we've developed as well, we took this idea of, oh, data provenance is important. We need to understand that when we're creating these models, machine learning models, that our data can't fit weird. We can't just steal our data from somewhere else. We have to license it. I don't want a company to take my data and use it to build an ML model, and then they get richer off of my data. These are concepts that we saw in the past, and we're just applying them to AI. So when hologram technology becomes a thing and all of your speakers are AI holograms, we'll probably look back to the research that we did and the controls that we put in place for just regular AI and apply that there. Any other questions? No, absolutely. So, and let me go back to this one. So I think organizational culture shifts how wide each one of those lanes are. And so if it's I'm trying to avoid saying the word legacy, but I'm imagining all of these companies that build software using waterfall, and like their manager cuts a ticket for every single piece of work that they do. In those worlds, you're probably better off investing more on process improvements. And so that product security engineer, if they're on the side of let's make the waterfall move faster so that this and the security piece of that smaller, I think that's where that investment goes. If the Is it back up? Nope, that's okay. Like in that case, that's what you would be seeing. If it's a case where culturally the company, everyone cares about security, and like you get asked questions every single 5 minutes about, can I do that? I'm investing more resources in the evangelism side of things because now people are consuming it. I just need to put out good information. And so that's what, it changes the thickness of those bars, if that makes sense. So thank you, it was a really good question. In the back, and then I'll come to you in a second. Yeah.
How do you combat against small organizations' desire to follow in Amazon's?
So I think, I'm guilty of that. Every single day I show up, I wake up and I say, God, I really wish people would write 5-page PR FAQs because it just makes it so much easier for me to understand what's happening. And the way that I fight with that with myself, and then the way that I push back on those sort of big company requirements compared to what we have at the smaller companies, the way that I handle that is really just thinking about the time that we're investing. And then I also challenge people on how long is what we have today going to stay that way? Because if we're in hockey stick growth, the way that even the services that we've built look night and day 3 months from now. It's going to change. And so the question that I ask people is like, okay, this process that you're building, is it a pet or is it cattle? Because if it's a pet, we'll keep it, we'll give it a name, we'll make sure it's fed. But if this is cattle, if this is something we're going to butcher, it's done. Like let's not waste too much time on that right now.
That was actually kind of my question. Was like basically like the kind of 3 stages you had. What if you're in a company that is not looking to grow anymore, like just profitable at the like 15 person?
Yeah. No. One thing. Are these recorded? Like going on the internet? We'll find out. So we'll find out if anybody watches it. So my little brother and I, he's also into organizational psychology. And one of the concepts that we joke about, and I don't know if this is widespread or just something that he made up, but it's POM, the point of mediocrity. And so if you're in a phase where you can invest minimal effort to have an acceptable life, you're not going to change. Why would you change? And so at that point, you have to decide, am I going to be the person that inspires others to achieve these great things that I think that we can? Or am I going to find a different team to be on? They're both acceptable answers in my opinion. I don't think very many people will say that out loud, but I think it's okay to be part of a 50-person company that's profitable and you don't have to do much work. Like that's, fishing every day is the dream. If you can have it now, why not? But then also, if you want to be creating a new thing that just everyone knows about and that's what drives you, it should be perfectly acceptable to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep doing a great job here, but I'm probably going to go somewhere else because I want to be on a team full of A players. There's a book by, I think it's Simon Sinek, that talks about building like A-player teams. And I can't remember the name right now, but something to read. It's inspiring when you're in that stage. Any other questions?
If your organization has overbuilt security, how do you...
So, I'm assuming if you've overbuilt, then you have budget to overbuild. I like to do a couple of things there. One, and I don't work for them, I don't get money from them, but there's this company called X Analytics. And what they do is they take actuarial data from cyber insurance companies. So the same thing that says if you live in Seattle zip code A versus Seattle zip code B, you have higher insurance rates. They take that data, you enter in your current risk posture. And so you say, oh, I've met all of these requirements, I'm doing these things, I have these controls. And they output an annual loss expectancy. And so just like with any other like financial loss, they do that for cyber risk. And so what you can do when you have this giant program, you can sum up the budget and say, this is how much money we're spending. This is our annual loss expectancy. Does the investment make sense? And then you can also work backwards from that. So you can say, I have control A, B, C. If I delete control B, my annual loss expectancy goes up by $1,000, but I pay $1 million a year for that control. It doesn't make sense to do. And so that's the way that I like to scale back those types of things. I don't generally want to scale it back because there's probably some other risk that we would rather shift that to. But if the right answer is to give the business back money, we should give the business back money so that we can get paid more, right? Any other questions? I probably have time for one more. And if not, okay. Thank you so much for coming. Please scan the QR code, leave feedback.